Look into my eyes, the eyes, not around the eyes. You're under. Subscribe to Markee. And you're back in the room. Welcome back to the Markee YouTube channel. I hope you enjoy your stay. Today we're going to be looking at r/AmITheA. I hope you loved today's episode. I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the Barbie, and get ready for some bloody good content. Thank you. Posted by user Imaginary Insurance 50. Titled, Am I the a-hole for rehoming the pets my mum got me for my birthday? So I am 17 and a female. My birthday was 2 weeks ago, and my mum got me 3 chinchillas. I had been saving up money through my job to buy my own supplies and chinchillas. I was surprised when my mum handed me the animals on my birthday. I was excited as they're a dream pet of mine. She gave them to me in a really smart travel cage sort of thing. Think one of those really crappy hamster cages that little kids keep their hamsters in. With the money I got for my birthday, including the money that I'd saved up, I had enough to get a multi-level cage and all the supplies and toys that I would need, and still have around $100 or so left. I didn't want to keep the chinchillas in the small cage they came with for long. So after checking over my budget one more time and clearing a space in my room, I told my mom I was heading to the pet store to grab a bigger cage and some supplies. My mom stopped me dead in my tracks and said I wasn't allowed to go. This started an argument between us, and my mum was going on about how she only thought that chinchillas live for a few months, and she didn't want a huge, stinky cage in her house, and how I was wasting my money on something that's probably not going to live that long. Since chinchillas are like a dream pet for me, I've done a lot of research about chinchilla care, and I kept telling her they live for around 10 years and need lots of room to play. But she kept saying, well, in the pet store, they said they'd be fine in that cage that I got you. Or, in the wild, they don't live that long. I'm sure they get eaten anyway. It got really frustrating for me, since I want to be a responsible owner and care for the animals properly. But my mum kept insisting that I was being overdramatic. Since I wasn't allowed to get the stuff I need for the chinchillas, I told my mum I was going to rehome them. She went off and called me dramatic, selfish, ungrateful, and rude. My dad came home later that day and told me I should apologize to my mum and keep my pets, and also that I was being unreasonable and acting like an a-hole towards my mum. I refused to apologize to my mum and got into contact with a friend of mine who I knew takes great care of her chinchillas and had an extra cage. I offered her the animals, and she took them and paid me. I went home and tried to give the money to my mum to pay her back, and she got mad and called me an ass and said I was ungrateful and acting like a terrible daughter. Am I the ass for hurting my mum's feelings? I mean, like, for sure you hurt her feelings by doing this and quote-unquote got rid of the present she gave you. But dear Lord, that pales in comparison to the toxic drivel that she's spewing. She's so out of touch with reality when it comes to basic care for animals and lifespans of all things. I can't imagine that doesn't translate to your daily life with her. Your dad also sucks in this situation for enabling her behavior and not realizing how disgusting his partner's views on these animals are. Shame on them. OP, not the a-hole for this one, and thank you for helping those poor chinchillas out. Now in the comments, 9OKM says, not the a-hole. Whoa, your mum scares me a bit. I got pets assuming they'd be dead in a few months, and now that you're telling me that's not the case, I want to find a way to make sure it happens anyway. Yikes, 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 yikes. Yikes is right. You'd think she'd be happy that you decided to get rid of them, after finding out they weren't about to die. Right? The mum sounds psychopathic. She puts you in a no-win situation, then calls you ungrateful and other names. These people have no respect for pets. Also, a larger cage is likely to be less stinky than a tiny one, especially with regular cleanings. OP's solution in no way affects the mum, yet she's making a big deal of it. This post pissed me off a lot more than most posts on this subreddit. Not the a-hole. The fact the dad thinks OP is the one being unreasonable. What the hell? Not the a-hole. OP's dad was probably using OP as a meat shield from his crazy wife, to be honest. I'm so impressed with OP and how she stood up to both her parents to do the right thing, even when it meant giving up the pets she had really wanted. OP, you're a good person, you should be very proud of yourself. Those little chinchillas were lucky to have you for the short time they did. Not the a-hole. The welfare of the animals was the top priority here. It seems like your mum forgot that these were living creatures and not toys. Even if they did only live a few months, they would have deserved to live those months in a comfortable environment. The fact that she didn't even bother to research them enough to learn how long they live and what kind of habitat they need before buying them for you makes her even more of the a-hole. Your dad is also the a-hole for siding with her on this. Also, a small cage would smell just as bad as a large one, if not worse, due to the animals being crammed together. Our next post is by user MisfitMama8766, titled, "Am I the a-hole for not helping my child-free sister pay for a family vacation? Most of my siblings have kids and we wanted to do something special for them after the pandemic ended. I pitched taking them all to Disneyland since my kids love it and their kids have never been. Normally they couldn't afford the trip, but I decided to pitch in and help them out. I feel like my little nieces and nephews deserved it after being cooped up inside for a year. My child-free sister was also invited, but she couldn't afford it. She found out I was helping the others and asked if I could help her out as well, which I declined. She's been bitter towards me since, saying I was trying to exclude her from the family, etc. Am I the asshole for not wanting to pay all this extra money to bring her on a trip to Disneyland meant for the children? She doesn't even like hanging out with the kids. I'm fine if she comes, but I just don't want to pay for it. Info. I'm paying for my nieces and nephews by splitting the trip cost 50-50 with each of my siblings. I pitched this as a vacation to cheer up the kids after they've been stuck inside all year because of the pandemic. Info 2. Childless sister is 26. She lives with roommates and works as a waitress. And info 3. Okay. To all the people telling me I invited her to this trip knowing she can't afford it, like, no? She heard about the trip, and I told her she's free to come along if she wants, because I'd be fine either way. Alright, before people jump on the you're the a-hole train for this one, this was 50-50 for the kids. It's confusing because in the post it says my child-free sister was also invited but she couldn't afford it. Then in info 3 she says that she heard about the trip and I told her she's free to come along if she wants. So I think the crux of the issue is, yes, this 26-year-old child-free sister isn't entitled to go 50-50 with OP's money, and that the siblings that are going with this OP are not doing 50-50, just the children are doing 50-50. I feel like that's really clear from the post, but a lot of people on Reddit are getting it the wrong way. So I'm gonna have to go not the a-hole for this one. Seems pretty clear to me, and if the 26-year-old childless sister doesn't want to come on the trip, she doesn't have to come on the trip. Now in the comments, Otaku Ninja 1311 says, "You're the a-hole. You won't help her because she doesn't have kids, but you invited her even though you knew she couldn't afford it, and then decided not to help her anyway? Jeez, I can't express this enough. You're the a-hole." And OP added that they didn't invite the sister. That doesn't change much in my opinion. Still an a-hole. Exactly this. I see a lot of reactions from people saying it's OP's money so they can decide what to do with it. I think an adult locked up inside deserves a vacation just as much, or even a little more. Why pay for the siblings but exclude her like that? That's not a family vacation. At least offer her the same 50-50 option. But the 50-50 option is only for the kids, not OP's siblings. Her sister doesn't have kids to offer the 50-50 option for. If the sister is struggling with money issues, why shouldn't OP offer her the same option? What does not having kids have to do with that? Imagine being an adult in pandemic times, having financial problems, and being excluded from much-needed vacations because you don't have kids. Doesn't seem right to me. Except, that's not what's happening. The other siblings have to pay their own way. OP isn't technically giving them anything, so they're in the same boat if you think about it. I have a problem with people thinking they're entitled to someone else's generosity. There's nothing wrong with OP deciding to do something nice for the kids in the family. It's like if she decided to buy each of the kids a toy and the 26-year-old sister showed up and said, "Where's mine?" Moreover, OP mentioned the sister doesn't even like hanging out with the kids. As usual, I disagree with the vast majority of Reddit. Strong, not the a-hole from me. No, the comment has been deleted for being uncivil now, but OP is helping pay for the parents' costs as well, not just their kids. Edit to add, that's OP's right of course, but since she's willing to pay for the other adults, AITA, you're the a-hole for me. You're the a-hole, OP. I get what your position is. You pitched a vacation geared towards the kids and helping the families with kids afford it. The only reason any of your siblings are going is because you subsidized their trip. And the only reason you're not subsidizing her is because she doesn't have kids. So why punish her for something like that? If this trip is truly about the kids, then helping their aunt afford it so she can spend some time bonding with them on a memory-making vacation would be a much more thoughtful action. Edit. After OP provided more info, OP, would it really be that big of a deal to subsidize 50% of your sister's expenses so she can be there? Again, I get that you're doing this for the kids, but you invited your sister and didn't offer any help for her, knowing she's a waitress and probably couldn't afford it. I again refer you to the point that nobody would be going if you weren't helping them, so why even invite her in the first place? It's clear you can afford to split the trip 50-50 with everyone else. Why cause the rift? I think you're still 100% the a-hole and actively forcing a divide between your sister and the rest of the family by not including her equally just because she hasn't started a family yet. She's a waitress who may not have been able to afford it at the best of times, but after a year of being a waitress during a pandemic? Exactly. OP should offer to help her sister based on what she arranged with the other siblings. Not the a-hole. Bring on the downvotes. Of course, there is a double standard. They are children, your sister is an adult. Like, I get that Reddit likes to think of children just as short adults, but they aren't, and there's nothing wrong with them getting extra attention and consideration over grown-ass people. Sometimes I get birthday gifts from my siblings. Sometimes I don't. My kid and nibblings always get multiple gifts and special treats for their birthdays from everyone. But I don't get jealous or upset by it. I pack drinks and snacks on family outings for the kids, and the adults are welcome to if they want, but they also have the ability to run to the gas station anytime to grab something. So I'm not concerned that I don't pack adult-friendly things. At the end of the day, this was a plan meant to cheer up the kids, not a family vacation for everyone that OP then turned into a trip for just the kids. If sister was younger, she probably would have been included as one of the kids. She can be upset at missing out, but don't try to ruin it for the kiddos. Our next post is by user Jerry the HVC Guy, titled, "Am I the a-hole for asking my emotionally fragile daughter, 16 female, to take a paternity test to help me in court?" So my wife and I are finally going through a divorce after living separated for almost 4 years. We didn't do this sooner because we both separated our finances and co-parented amicably, and didn't want to waste the money. We originally separated after I confronted her on multiple affairs, but I wasn't mad, just happy to be done with it. Our daughter was not fazed too much by the transition at first, because we tried to make it as easy as possible on her. However, just 2 months after I moved out, my wife moved a boyfriend into our house and made daughter very uncomfortable, so she decided to live with me the majority of the time instead. Wife has since been very irresponsible about bringing men around daughter. When the pandemic hit, my business boomed while my wife lost her job and had to start working at a grocery store instead. Wife finally decided to file for divorce and take me for what I was worth, as I was now making way more than her. I'm not gonna lie, things went from meditation to a hostile divorce very quickly when she requested more custody and money than I thought she was entitled to. Ultimately, wife was unwilling to admit to her affairs, and I threatened to get a paternity test for our daughter to prove her infidelity. I had suspicions before about the paternity of my daughter, but never acted on them because I didn't want to lose her. This was a mistake because this caused my wife to reveal to daughter that she was an affair baby. Moreover, she told our daughter that if I found out that she was an affair baby, then I would do unspeakable things to her. Wife told daughter all of this to try to get her out of my home and drive a wedge in a relationship. This has caused my daughter to be distant to me and paranoid and emotionally a wreck for months, and I didn't know why. After talking to my lawyer and getting assurance my parental rights would not be affected by a paternity test, I decided to ask my daughter to take it. I sat her down and explained that it was just to prove her mum's infidelity and that she was still my daughter. Unfortunately, before I could tell her much of anything, she had a full-on panic attack and locked herself in her room. Eventually, her favorite auntie, my sister, came to pick her up, and she's now living with her family. My aunt is the one who informed me of the things that my wife said. Daughter and I have been going to counseling, and daughter plans to come to live with me again. Court also ordered wife not to contact daughter, and my lawyer thinks we will do well. But my sister thinks I'm an a-hole for asking my daughter for the test. But the time to prove my wife's infidelity was running out, and I thought my relationship with my daughter was stronger than just genetics. Am I the a-hole for asking my emotionally fragile daughter for a paternity test? Daughter and I never took test, but I was able to prove infidelity in other ways. No, I don't think you're the a-hole for doing that at all. There's no way you could have known what your ex had been telling your daughter for all that time, and she's a piece of crap for involving her so heavily in this divorce. I can't imagine the amount of damage she's done to this poor child just to get back at you and get some more money from you. I'm glad things are going better now, and I hope things continue to improve with your daughter. You're a good man, OP, not the a-hole. Now in the comments, me reading the title, yes, you obviously are. Me reading the whole post, holy heck, no, you are absolutely not the a-hole. Lesson learned, read things properly, people. Not the a-hole. It was in your daughter's best interest for you to get custody and not pay more than necessary in alimony. It's 100% understandable that she freaked out and didn't see it that way. X is obviously the a-hole for forcing you into that position in the first place. I really wish that OP had not made this request his first acknowledgement of the elephant in the room. I wish he had sat her down and had a conversation about it first, in which he made it clear that her genetic origins will not change their bond. I wish he had given her space to cry and feel her feelings and ask him questions as needed. I wish he had not opened with, "I want you to take a paternity test." I cannot imagine what a gut punch that must have been. Asking her to do this before they've had a chance to process the likelihood that she's not his biological child together was too much too soon. And I'm not the least bit surprised that she completely panicked. I don't think OP is the a-hole, but man, that doesn't mean he handled this well. I really wish all those things too, but it's important to remember he didn't know the things we know about what her mother had been telling her, and he didn't have the faintest idea. He could have handled it the way you describe anyway, just from knowing it was a sensitive subject, and he should have, but I can understand why he was blindsided. Not the a-hole. The monster is your wife. She poisoned your daughter's mind, and now you are both paying the price. But instead of framing it as a paternity test, you should have simply gotten her a full genetic screening through a site like 23andMe. They give you extensive reports about potential health conditions, so it would have been much easier to frame it in a context of something that you're doing for the sake of health, rather than something you're doing to prove that her mom was sleeping around. Not admissible in court, and the OP needs to prove infidelity. It's also disingenuous, and the last thing OP's daughter needs is to feel like her father betrayed her trust. And our next post is by user Throwaway37282, titled, "Am I the a-hole for threatening to kick out my sister-in-law after she became vegan?" Now, I know the title sounds bad, but hear me out. I, 32 female, am currently divorcing my soon-to-be ex-husband, 38 male. Even though we're not together anymore, I'm still very close to his sister, 27 female. Let's call her A. A lost her job during the pandemic and couldn't pay rent anymore, so I let her move in since I have a pretty big house that's mostly unused since my husband moved out. I don't want any money for it, but since she's staying at home 24/7 and I'm working a 50-hour job, we made an agreement that she makes food for us too. It all worked out perfectly until 2 days ago, she said she wants to go vegan and won't cook meat anymore. Now, hear me out. I regularly have to lift heavy objects at my job, so I need the meat to stay in shape. Also, this is my house, and I don't want to be forced into a diet I don't want. I started shouting at her and said she can pack her things and get the hell out if she doesn't change her mind. She started crying and calling me a psycho. Yesterday, her parents called and told me that I was too harsh with her and am the a-hole. I even got an angry text message from my husband about how evil I am and blah blah. However, I think I'm in the right. Am I the a-hole? You think it's normal just to start shouting and telling her you can get the hell out of my house because you're not gonna cook meat? You're really gonna burn that bridge because she's not gonna cook meat for you? I think this divorce is hitting you harder than you realize. You woke up today and you chose violence when that text message came through. Like, just because she's going vegan doesn't mean that you have to. You realize that's a choice, right? She can make the meal for you, and then you just cook some food. You don't just have to kick it into gear and go full psycho angry mode telling her to get the hell out if she doesn't change her mind. You were too harsh in this situation. It got around so much that your husband texted you to tell you how evil you were. How are you still so in denial about this? Please reevaluate your decisions and your life choices from here. You're the a-hole. Now in the comments, OKSympathy6395 says, I started shouting at her and said she can pack her things and get the hell out if she doesn't change her mind. She started crying and calling me a psycho. Friend, are you like, okay? I'm gonna say you're the a-hole here because you made zero attempts to have any kind of calm conversation about readjusting your agreement. Maybe she could start paying rent or clean instead if she can't continue to cook for you? Or maybe it's time to make an amicable end to this arrangement. But starting to shout at her for changing her diet is just ridiculous. She's allowed to become vegan and you're allowed to kindly and calmly discuss with her whether or not that will work for you. Not to mention that sister-in-law being vegan doesn't mean OP has to be. I'm mostly vegan, and I usually just grill up a chicken breast or a bit of fish to put on top of my meal for my husband. You're the a-hole, but not for wanting to eat meat. The way you reacted makes you the a-hole. It was not necessary to shout at and threaten her living situation over her desire to change her own diet. So yeah, I feel like that's as far as I can go with these ones. Everyone's kind of just repeating the same thing. So let me know what you guys think of this one down in the comments below.